Hello. I'm going to be doing something a bit different this time. Instead of taking a look at another adaptation, I'm going to be starting up a second series called Crossover Crisis. One guess what I'll look at here? That's right, pancakes. Oh, they look so good. Why must Pancake Day be in February, not July? Oh well. Pancakes are awesome, but you know what else is awesome? Crossovers. We all love crossovers. It's the ultimate form of fan service in my opinion, to see characters from two separate franchises meet up and interact with each other. There's a reason why crossovers are the most common type of fanfiction other than porn. But there are some crossover concepts that you think up and wonder, why hasn't this been made yet? So this is a list with the top 10 crossover concepts that haven't been used but should be. But I'm going to need some help. Well, not need, but I'd like it. So allow me to introduce Big Papa Ferb! I don't think he's coming.
So both of you, he's gonna rewrite history.
What? Stinger magic?
Number 10. I'm sure you've all heard of Super Smash Bros, the fighting game series that features characters from all the top Nintendo franchises.
And you may have heard of the completely unrelated PlayStation All-Stars, a fighting game that features characters from all the top PlayStation franchises.
Well, what if Microsoft went ahead and did their own all-star crossover fighting game?
It would suck.
Well, yeah, but what if they did it as a third-person shooter? You'd have characters from Halo, Gears of War, Fable, Crackdown, Alan Wake, Banjo-Kazooie, and the Gunstringer? Oh, and Bill Gates. Fun would be the name of the game, not kill streaks and perks. But it would be third person, both to be different from every other fucking shooter these days, and so you can properly see your character. Oh, and no cover system either.
Ah, but would it have hats?
No. Number 9. Say Ferb, who is the king of the monsters?
The Smog Monster?
What? No! Try again.
Jet Jaguar. No, but seriously, it's Godzilla. He had crossovers with a lot of other giant monsters over the years, including King Kong back in '62, but another American giant monster movie was released since the last Godzilla film, Cloverfield, so we think Godzilla should fight Clover. Yeah, Godzilla vs Clover come in 2015. On a side note, Power Rangers vs Godzilla. I think I broke him.
Jet Jaguar! Jet! Number 8. World's biggest sci-fi franchise. Go!
Star Wars!
I was hoping you'd say Star Trek. Crossover! I think every young sci-fi fan has taken their Millennium Falcon and USS Enterprise toys and had to engage in a space battle. So this would probably have been higher if not for the fact that it's such an obvious choice.
Star Trek deals in parallel universes all the time, so the setup for the plot is pretty obvious. Maybe the Klingons get manipulated by a Sith Lord and the Jedi need to work with the Federation to bring down this mysterious puppet master. Extra points if it stars William Shatner and Mark Hamill.
Well, some might say that Star Trek is about exploration, not space battles. The 09 reboot was basically a Star Wars movie, so set it in the new timeline and problem solved.
Don't we need some sort of gag here?
Yeah. Number 7. Square Enix used to be the king of the JRPGs, but then this happened. And this. And this. And these, and you get the idea. The point is, Square Enix lost the plot, but there's another company waiting to take its place on the throne. Atlas. Atlas is best known for its Megami Tensei franchise, I say franchise because of all the various sub-series that are part of the franchise, including Shin Megami Tensei, Digital Devil Saga, Devil Summoner, and most famously, Persona. But even with the sub-series, very few have direct sequels featuring the same cast.
So naturally, a game that brings together protagonists from a sub-series, or even across the whole franchise, could be a cool idea.
It could be done in one of three ways. 1. An RPG with the cast being previous protagonists.
2. A fighting game in the style of the upcoming Persona 4 Arena.
And 3. A game in the style of the Dissidia of Final Fantasy. It's rare that copying something Square Enix has done is a good idea.
Speaking of which, do you have a plan on reviewing Dissidia?
Someday, but I have more pressing matters right now. Number 6. This one may require a little explanation. In 2004, Koei made a Japan-themed spin-off of the Dynasty Warriors franchise called Samurai Warriors. Capcom immediately looked at that and said, these games make a lot of money. We deserve some of that action. And 18 months later, Capcom released Sengoku Basara.
In their defence though, they did give it a Devil May Cry flair and exaggerate everything and everyone in this game.
True, but the point is this. Samurai Warriors has already crossed over with Dynasty Warriors in the excellent Warriors Odyssey series, and those two are set over a millennium apart. So why not cross-dimensional barriers and meet with their Basara counterparts? They could call it Muso Basara in Japan and Basara Warriors internationally.
The gameplay would have to meet about halfway, more over the top than Warriors, but more realistic than Basara.
And come on, tell me you wouldn't like to see the fun-loving womanizer Magoichi Saika meet the always serious female Magoichi Saika. We've already established at this point that Capcom would do anything for money, so there's no reason they'd say no. But maybe Koei should handle development because Capcom would have 12 characters of dislike content and charge 20 quid for them. Number 5. Marvel vs DC, the fighting game. Why hasn't this happened yet?
Because of all the legal issues.
Oh yeah.
In all fairness, we all know this would make a shitload of money from its premise alone.
Yeah, superhero crossovers are really popular, as the very existence of the Avengers and Justice League will tell you.
And when they crossed over in comics in the 90s, they actually let the fans vote on which characters would win their fights, and a game would let the individual player choose.
Both have had crossover games in the past, but the question is, which company would make the game? NetherRealm Studios or Capcom? Mortal Kombat was a piece of shit, and MVC had basically no content, and an enhanced version was released within 9 months. So I'd certainly give this to Remedy. Sure, they've never made a fighting game and it would take half a decade to come out, but at least you'd have something worth playing in the end.
You really hate that Mortal Kombat game, don't you?
Figured that out all by yourself, did you?
Oh, right in the pride.
Number 4. And speaking of Marvel, out of all the rivalries set up in MVC3, which one made the most sense?
Spider-Man and Albert Wesker.
You're doing this on purpose now, aren't you?
I'm kidding. It's Dante and Deadpool.
Yes. I mean, they're both basically the same character. Badass, unkillable, wisecracking mercenaries who wear red and wield swords and guns.
With nothing known about the upcoming Deadpool game's gameplay, we can only assume it will be a hack and slash anyway, so why not put him in a Devil May Cry game?
And Deadpool's done a fair bit of dimension hopping in recent years, so that's your setup. Deadpool crosses over into the Devil May Cry universe and teams up with Dante to kick some ass in both gameplay and highly choreographed cutscenes.
Given Deadpool's fighting style, swords and guns, he'd fight very similar to Dante.
And he could even have styles like Dante does, a teleporting one like Virgil Darkslayer, a gunslinger variant, a swordmaster variant, and something else, like taunt-based style. And maybe switching styles would make him say the button that was pressed instead of the style he switched to.
And as we've already established, Capcom would do anything for money, so their participation goes without saying.
I can just imagine the business meeting now.
Ninja Theory. You are to make a Devil May Cry and Deadpool crossover game, but completely ruin the character designs and personalities.
Yes, Master. I will do as you command.
Good. With this, the ruination of the characters will be complete.
Number 3. We all think robots are cool, right?
Yeah.
Well, what are the 2 biggest franchises about robots?
If you say the Matrix, I'll stab you in the face with a compass.
They are, of course, Terminator and Transformers.
Si, senor. The basic premise I've constructed is that the Transformers arrive, either for the first time or after being away for a while, on post-Judgment Day Earth. Megatron takes over Skynet and begins constructing an army to fight the Autobots. You know those motorbike robots from Terminator Salvation? There'd be new models of them that could transform into Terminators. The Autobots of course side with the human resistance, and we'd finally have human characters that we can actually like. John Connor and Kyle Reese.
And it's not like the Transformers would seem unrealistic in the Terminator universe, given us time travel and evil robots trying to wipe out mankind, with good robots trying to save them. Now that I think about it, Transformers practically is the Terminator. And who was that fit lass in the second Transformers that was blatantly a Terminator?
Could this be... Zoom it. Is it zoomed?
Yeah.
Good. A parallel universe? Number 2. Back in mid-2009, there was a game released that was an open-world sandbox game about a superpowered being.
Are you talking about Prototype or Infamous?
Yes. Prototype and Infamous were both released within a month of each other and were naturally the subject of comparison. Prototype stars Alex Mercer, a morally ambiguous anti-hero, while Infamous stars Cole McGrath, a character with plague-controlled morality. The sequel drew the lines much more clearly, with Mercer becoming the antagonist and Cole being designated as canonically good.
So that means that a crossover would have a clear good guy and bad guy?
That's right. The only question that remains is, would Cole head into the New York quarantine zone, or would Mercer travel to Empire City to spread the Black Knight virus?
Maybe both. Maybe Cole stops the infection and pursues Alex back to New York City to bring an end to the virus.
Maybe. And maybe he teams up with James along the way.
Maybe. And maybe DC could do a comic of it, since they do the Infamous comics.
Maybe. Maybe we should move on.
Maybe.
Number 1. Alright, this is the big one. This is for all the marbles. Ferb, who is the greatest lawman in all of movies?
Robocop.
And who is the greatest lawman in all of comics?
Judge Dredd.
Why has this not happened yet? You'd think, given that both of the top cops in their respective futures and both have badass guns and somewhat similar helmets, you'd think that this crossover would have happened at some point.
The plot could involve Robocop or Dredd going through time and teaming up with the other. Simple enough.
Or they could take the Judge Dredd vs Predator path and have a descendant of Alex Murphy appear and become some kind of robo-judge. Either way, Judge Dredd and Robocop is the number 1 crossover we'd like to see. And that's our list. We hope you enjoyed it, but before we go, here are the crossover series that we want more installments of. Marvel vs Capcom, only with actual content and no bullshit. Dissidia Final Fantasy with an actual thought out story and not as a rhythm game. And Warriors Orochi Empires, basically Warriors Orochi where you can take over the land. And that's it. Thanks for joining me, Ferb.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
But first, a few honourable mentions. Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, 2 awesome hack and slash games made by the same guy, and Capcom would do anything for money.
Wolverine vs Predator. Seeing how Predator would cope with Wolverine shrugging off all of its most deadly weapons would be pretty sweet.
Sherlock Holmes and Batman, history's greatest detective, teams up with today's greatest detective.
The Princess of Persia, starring the 3 protagonists of the franchise with gameplay from Prince of Persia 08, The Forgotten Sands, and Classic.
Godzilla vs Batman, there was actually a plan for this back in '65.
And finally, pretty much everybody hates Twilight, so how about Buffy in Twilight?
What about Blade in Twilight?
Or Castlevania in Twilight?
Or Van Helsing in Twilight?
Or Legacy of Kain in Twilight?
Or Vampire the Masquerade in Twilight?
Or Stubbs the Zombie in Twilight?
Stubbs the Zombie?
Yeah, because they've had werewolves and vampires, but they've not had zombies.
Oh. You really hate that Mortal Kombat game, don't you?
Figured that out all by yourself, did you?
Oh, right in the pride.
What was that about?
I don't know.